Hello, Kevin Inoue here from Fight Designer LLC and the University of Wyoming and the Society of American Fight Directors. I got some new toys in for Fight Designer LLC that I thought I'd share. These are some of the more unusual blank firing models that I have coveted elsewhere but have not been readily available in the United States. And so I thought I'd give a quick update, and then hopefully if I have time, which might be after the show that I'm in right now, I'll be able to share some firing tests and some more feedback as sort of a part two, the same way I did with the Rite blank firing guns in the earlier series of video reviews of those. So let's start here with one that's not entirely new, but it is a different version. Now, these are all from Umarex, which, as those of you who know blank firing guns know, is one of the more reputable models. It is also the only one that actually goes and secures the rights to the trademarks. So these are the only actual full trademark blank firing props that are out there. So that's one of the things that I really appreciate about them, especially for film. They hold up much better for close-ups because instead of having the name of a blank firing gun company, or saying replica or something like that, they'll actually have the trademarks from Colt or Smith & Wesson or whoever it is. So this particular one is the Colt 1911A1. Now this has been previously available for a while, but it was kind of hard to find. There was a wave of them that came in when Umarex had sort of its last wave that included the Walther P99 and the Chief Special Revolvers and the P22. But at the time, they were all top vent, and Umarex does this odd thing with their top vent blank firing guns. So I'm going to find my older one here, where I guess this is to accommodate for the vent while the slide moves. Let's see if I can move up and get the camera to focus. You can see how it's got this cutout on the slide. And to me, that actually somewhat undoes the benefits of having these lovely trademarks and things like that, because as soon as you see the top of the slide at all, it is clearly not right in some way. I also might actually weaken these. I have had one of their P22s that kind of self-destructed during the Virginia Beach Bash workshop, doing a firearms workshop there 4 years ago, something like that. And the slide did break. It may or may not have been because of the cutout, but I've always found that a little odd. So I've always prized their top vent models. It's been really hard to find up until a few years ago. I did have one of the P99s and some other things that I could find, but for the most part, these I could only get in top vent. And as we all know who work with these on a regular basis, the Kemar and Bruni 1911s have a lot of issues. The magazine release always breaks, the sear sometimes has issues, things like that. If you watch my video on Colt 45s, you'll see that come up in action. So these aren't bad, but again, I'm not a huge fan of the top vent. They are still more reliable than the Kemars, but they look a little weird up close. So I was very excited to be able to find now some of these in the original intended front vent. So if I get a little closer and get it to focus, as you can see, there's none of those weird cutouts on the slide. It does have the sort of restrictor and divider thing on the inside there, but it does leave it open to the internal threading, which allows you to attach those flare adapters or a fake suppressor or something like that. It has the same issues that all of the blank firing 1911s do, of the slide lock being connected to the magazine. Slide won't go forward, kind of pinches the magazine. You do also have to push in the magazine release in order to insert the magazine without it causing problems. It's not quite as big an issue as it is with some of the Kemar and the Brunis, but it's still something to be aware of. So if you're working with any of these blank firing 1911s, please, please, please make sure that you are holding down the magazine release while you insert that magazine, and then let go. Make sure it's seated, then you can chamber around. There we go. Colt 1911A1, functional thumb safety. And as with all of the 1911s, it is a single action, single stack, not high capacity. One other thing that I do sometimes like to test, and this is the only one of them I'm showing today that I actually have a holster for, is will it fit in a holster? In this case, I've got it in a little Kydex paddle holster. So as you can see, it does fit fairly well. Some of my solid cast rubber 1911s are a little too thin, or the things don't line up quite right, so it won't actually catch properly in these to be able to work with the release. This one works just fine. A little bit of a rattle, but not that big a deal. Any leather holsters, anything like that, shouldn't be a problem at all. And as for things like the grips, I haven't tested it yet, but these are pretty standard checkered rubber grips. I imagine if you wanted a more World War II or Vietnam era look, you could probably swap these grips out for something else. If nothing else, get some wood grips and you can re-drill and adjust the holes as needed. 1911 grips are pretty easy to find. So up next, we have another revolver. Now, some of you probably know I'm a big fan of those Colt Chief Specials. I bought those out when I heard that they were going to stop importing them, so I've got a big stash of them. Been selling them off to friends. And they're great. They're a nice tight little J-frame. They are in top vent. But I was looking for a little bit more variety and a slightly larger option as well. I mean, I certainly get a lot of use out of the Vipers and some of the other revolvers. A little bit less of a fan of the Zeraki revolvers just because some of the crimp blanks don't fit in that. The back just doesn't have enough space to allow the cylinder to rotate freely. So in general, my go-to is usually those Vipers in various sizes from the old trend. But when I can, I love the Umarex revolvers. I have one of the Ruger Red Hawks. Those have been hard to find, but I do have one and a bunch of those smaller J-frames. But I wanted some other options. So the one I went with here is the Colt Detective Special, a little bit different from the Chief Special. So a couple of features about this one. It does have the slightly older style of cylinder release, so sort of like the Colt Pythons, if you remember the old Bruni and Kimar Colt Pythons. So you pull back on this part. It's a little stiff when new. This came kind of dry. It'll probably break in, or I could oil it up a little bit better, but it's serviceable. If I had an actor doing it on screen or on stage, I might be a little worried about it and move it up a bit, but for the most part it's fine. But I do like this. It's comfortable. It's a good size, I think, for a snub nose. It's going to read fine. It's got these nice big Colt trademarks that'll show fairly well, and it looks like it's got some authority to it. As with all revolvers, you have the issues potentially with being able to see whether or not it's loaded by looking at the front of the cylinders here. As with all of these models, it's got that divider in the front and a threaded barrel, although generally not going to put a suppressor on a revolver. But the flare adapters could still go there. And as with any of the modern revolvers, it can be either double action or single action, depending on how hard of a trigger pull you want to have. So next up, we have another Walther. They've really had a lot of success with those Walthers. This is a newer version, though. This is the Walther PPQ, so a little bit different from the old P99s. Similar to those, it is a hammerless model. I don't know if it's truly a striker fire or what, but it does not have an exposed hammer anyway. Similar controls. It doesn't have the ambidextrous magazine release that the P99 has. It has your standard release button here. I love that it's got a Picatinny rail, which the P99 does not. So if you're looking for something that looks a little bit more modern and high-tech, you want to be able to accessorize it, you can do that with these in a way that you can't with the P99s very easily. And as with the others that I mentioned, it does have the threaded inner barrel, so yes, you can attach a suppressor to it if you had a character who had to pretend to be doing something a little more stealthily. Now again, these are not real suppressors. They don't actually reduce the volume at all. It's still full volume. Looking at the paperwork that came with this, I'm a little intrigued. It does look like they might make an actual suppressor with this sort of reverse threading that wouldn't work with a real firearm, but would work with these. I'll have to do some research on that. I'm not sure how the ATF would classify that, if it would be considered somehow readily convertible or not. I mean, it's going to have a weird interior diameter and this reverse threading thing, so it might be safely considered a replica suppressor and not a real one. But those NFA items are something you don't want to mess around with and get arrested for. So I haven't tested that theory out yet. Gotta say, this has a great feel to it, great ergonomics. It points very well. It's got this little grip in the front of the trigger guard for anybody who likes to put their support hand up there, if you have larger hands or whatever. I kind of like the stippling on this one, and there's some nice touches like the little Walther logo on the magazine base plate as well, which if you have a close-up of the gun on someone's hip, that might show. So again, I haven't testified any of these yet, but so far I like this. It has the grip texturing both in the back for sort of the slingshot type racking, but also up on the front. This I wouldn't want to do with a top vent. But again, these are front vent. So if you have somebody with modern firearms training who likes to rack it by holding the front there, maybe do a little chamber check or whatever, this is a firearm that would work just fine for that. Now the last one, and I have to say this is probably the one I'm the most excited about. This is a Smith & Wesson M&P9c. I'm a little surprised that they don't have the full-size Smith & Wesson as well. I know, for example, when Bruni Gap did the Glock 17 types, they had the full-size and the compact. But this is a great option for somebody who wants a compact firearm that has full trademarks. It's a recognizable modern model. This is a great choice for your detective character or your civilian. Once again, it's got full trademarks on both sides, on the grip here as well, but also on the magazine base plate here, which is a nice touch. It can work with the fixed suppressor. It's got the threading there in the barrel. It also has the Picatinny rail, so you could attach some accessories to the front here if you wanted to. This is a compact. One of the things I did with one of the Bruni Glocks, the compact ones that I like, is I put the little extended magazine plate. I got one of the little curved pinky grip kind of things that attaches to it, replaces the other magazine base plate. I personally find that that gives me a better grip. I don't like the fact that my pinky doesn't really fit on this. But, you know, as a compact carry, concealed carry, there's definitely something to be said for not having that sticking out and for being able to have it stay flush with the body. So it certainly works. You just wrap around the bottom. But if I were wanting to tinker with this and customize it, you know, chances are decent that I could probably, you know, the base plate comes off easily if you push in the center thing and slide it out like a real one would. So there's a chance that you could get a extended grip if you wanted that. But this is great. You know, this will hold up really well in a close-up. It's kind of a modern icon in firearms design. You're going to see a lot more of these than you are the Beretta 92s, I think. Plus, again, full trademarks, which you gotta love. It does look like the sights might be somewhat adjustable. That worries me a little just because I've occasionally had some models where those fall off, so that might be something to watch for. And I don't currently have in stock any Kydex or leather holsters that are specifically made for this model, so I can't check the fit. But if it's like the other Umarexes, I think there's a pretty good bet that this would slide in just fine. As a side note, I did test the Retain Baron the other day, and that does work with a real SIG holster as well. That fit fairly well. But Umarex definitely has a much higher attention to detail than the Retain ones do, and it's you know, from the fit and the finish and trademarks and all that. These are great. You know, I've thought about using one of these. In the show that I'm in right now. I'm currently acting in a show called What Would Crazy Horse Do at Relative Theatrics. And my character in that is a bodyguard who does have a concealed handgun. I ended up deciding, actually, and this might be an interesting tangent for those of you who use these in live theater, I was actually a little worried that this might look too real. And that because it's a smaller theater and the audience can get in so close and they can see those trademarks, that there might be somebody in the house who was worried that I was using a real firearm on stage. Now we're doing our best to make sure they're not ever pointed at the audience and things like that. But that could cause a level of concern that could take them out of the story and make them worried for the actor's safety, if nothing else. I know I would be if I didn't know that these existed. So I ended up going with one of the compact Glock models. It doesn't have the full trademarks. It still sounds and feels pretty realistic, but anybody who knows guns that well and stares at it close enough is going to know, okay, there's something that's not quite authentic with this. It doesn't have the Glock trademarks and things like that. So again, trying to find that right balance. But for film, no one's ever going to be worried about the performer's safety, because if anything was going to happen, it would have happened a year or two ago when they were shooting, not now as this person is sitting watching it on their tablet, which is probably more likely than their TV these days. So for film, you really want something that'll hold up as a hero prop. You know, it'd be great to have a rubber double of this for your stunts, perhaps an airsoft gas blowback for if you have to do a point-blank headshot, execution style, something like that. But the other good thing about these common popular models like the M&P, you can get these. You know, you can get gas blowback metal versions with or without trademarks. You can get cheapy spring gun versions if you just want to have one for a stunt that you don't care about, and it's cheaper than buying a custom-made rubber one. You can get holsters for it fairly easily. So these are great options to have. So I now have two of these in stock, two of those front vent 1911s. the one of the PPQs and the one of the Detective Specials. You can rent any of these props at Fight Designer LLC for your theatrical or film productions. I'm also available to provide fight choreography, gun wrangling, and other services like that. As always, if you have any questions, you can always comment down below, or send me an email or contact me through my website at www.fightdesigner.com. We had a couple requests earlier for some more, perhaps podcasts on historical swordsmanship and adapting that for the stage. Following an article that I had where I was interviewed that came out in the New York Times on the proper way to fall for civilian use. There were some requests for me to put together some video that worked with that. These are various projects that might happen in the future. At the moment I'm a little swamped between the semester and some upcoming directing projects and the acting that I'm doing right now. But feel free to weigh in if there's something like that that you are looking forward to or wanting to see. As always, I do take requests and I'll get around to them when I can. So thank you very much. Remember to play safe, look good, have fun, and as the late great Patty Crane would say, za.